Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So this is season 2, episode I think 10, I believe. So yeah, this is we got finally to the double digits of season 2. And today we are actually here with a great friend of mine, Mariana.
Yay. Oh, this is awesome.
So, explain to people like who you are and how we know each other and all of that.
Well, that's a really long story, isn't it? I know Lila since Lila was very tiny, a very little child, friends with my sister since you guys were what, like 6 or 7?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, some of that.
yeah. So I know you since you were like 6 or 7, which makes me really old. Yeah, and yeah, my sister and Lila used to go to the same school in Montreal, back in Montreal, and and yeah, and my sister comes back one day like, oh, there's this girl whose mom is from Brazil as well, and then my mom invited them over, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Which is actually funny because like now like years later and stuff, like I actually talk to you way more than I talk to Laura.
Yeah,
So
Laura now is like,
yeah.
but
Yeah, she's living her life. She's in her own work mode life and travel and boyfriend and all of that.
yeah,
So, let's talk a little bit more about what you do for a living, and then kind of get into as well, like how you got into it.
all right. So I am an audio engineer. I specifically mix and master music, but I also do post production for TV shows and movies sometimes. So I basically make things sound good, make things sound clear. Um, yeah, on your speakers and headphones and everywhere. It's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, how did you get into it? So like how many years have you been doing it and all of that stuff?
um, been doing it for. I mean, I went to school for it and graduated in 2014, and I kind of did some of that while I was in school as well. And then after graduating, that's when I started getting some gigs from there. So I guess almost 10 years, like,
That's
or even
crazy.
10 years. It's, yeah, hard to put like an actual number, but
Mm-hmm.
sort of, yeah, 10 years, I would say.
So with like your background in music,
Yep.
share like a story of like how that started. Like when did you, like start getting interested in music and learning music and all of that stuff?
Well, I pretty much grew up with MTV, like my mom was a big MTV fan. Um, and, I grew up with her like turning on the TV and watching like music videos. So I was kind of geared to music in that sense. My parents don't play any instruments, so it's not did not come from like watching my parents play or perform. And yeah, around high school, like my friends were learning, guitar, piano, whatever, and decided to learn bass. And from there, then I started to write songs, and then I had a few bands that I played in, and then I noticed that I was spending more time like recording the demos for the band than I was like searching for shows, like working on getting fans, and like spending more time on learning how to record than like actually writing these songs and doing things for the band to grow. So I was like, maybe I should pursue this, and I applied for Concordia University, the electroacoustics program, and just went there and got my degree in electroacoustics, which has a lot of sort of like sound design, but electroacoustic composition and a bunch of recording courses, like really good recording courses. So yeah, and after that, I just you know, just work, just through, how it goes. Like one person gives you a gig, you do a good job, they'll give you another gig, or like their friend, recommend it to a friend, and so on and so forth. And then, yeah, it's been that way. And I've been working at the CBC for a year now, full time, um, and still mixing and mastering as well, um, like as like my own business. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find that like what do you find has changed in the music industry from kind of like when you first started to now?
Um, well, I mean, when I started, things were already going towards streaming anyway. I started, I, I had my first band right when streaming was starting to happen, so I already
Mm.
came into that. Yeah, Spotify had just been created when I was forming my band. So I kind of grew up already with that reality of like, yeah, people are gonna be paid cents. Actually, back in the day, I thought that it was gonna all work out and that people would be able to make a living out of it. That like eventually, as more people signed up to Spotify, what they pay per play would go up because more people would be signed up. Didn't happen, right? In fact, the opposite because more and more people started adding music and then just like you have to it gets spread out towards like so many artists and so many plays. But yeah, that's sort of how things happen. Like I think the industry now, I mean, I'm talking about like the on the music end, but on the from the engineering end of things, like I think that what's changed is like these tools that automate things, like AI based stuff. um I think that what changed in the industry is that it's like way harder to get an entry level job. Way harder,
Mm.
right? So it doesn't. All of these tools don't affect me because I'm already like fairly like established. I'm at a level that people hire me because of me. They don't hire me just because just because they need. Oh, I just need somebody to do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like because they like how I work. They like working with me. They like I think about like I think about audio now more like a consultant almost than like just a a person that's adding processing to things, like
Mm.
adding effects to things
Interesting.
and correcting things. Like it's more like I'm able to tell if somebody sends me a track that has like it's happened where somebody sends me a song that has like it's the vocals go mute halfway through the song. It happened. The last example that I remember is like all of a sudden the vocals cut off halfway through the song, and I'm like, hey man, like I noticed that this song has like this, was this intentional? I just wanted to, check out with you if that's what you were intending, or if that's a mistake when you exported the track. And turns out it was, AI can't do that. Like AI
Eh.
can't do fades in between songs on a record. Like AI, there's still a lot of things that like. But anyway, the point is, you still have to be at that level where you pass the sort of entry level stage. But I feel really bad for entry level people because entry
Mm-hmm.
level people are going to be getting into the more menial tasks. They're like cleaning up, in post production, like in audio post production, the first job that an audio post production person would have in, say, like a post house would be like, or working for a more experienced freelance person would be like, oh, can you clean up like this dialogue, you know? Or like, can you edit this dialogue? Like dialogue editing used to be a job in and of itself, and now it pretty much doesn't exist anymore because there's so many tools for correcting dialogue that like people just like, the same person that's doing the mixing does that too pretty much these days. So anyway, so what's happening is it's not affecting people who are already established, but it makes things a lot harder for people who are starting out because the those simple tasks have been automated. And that's not happening only to audio, by the way. I have friends who graduated from law, and usually parents are like
Yeah.
proud of their kids who go to law, and now their kids went to law school and they're having trouble finding work. Like their parents need to be like need to have connections with other law firms to get them work because the first job you'll get in a firm, in a law firm, if you don't have connections, it's probably like helping them draw contracts. And there's so many programs now automating contracts. Like,
So
you know,
AI is taking over the world.
exactly. And that damages young people more than it does
Mm-hmm.
people who are already established, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah, it's been very interesting in regards to kind of like the job after graduating kind of thing too, because I even had friends
Yeah,
recently that also graduated from audio engineering, and
yeah,
they were promised to have jobs and haven't.
yeah,
Haven't gotten any, and it's been very difficult as well. Like people also kind of don't want to work with
yeah.
newbies that are just like straight out of school, and that makes it so difficult because you spend so much money investing in these programs and learning, and even if you're great, it still could be very hard to get a job.
Well, I mean, these programs, you have to think about these university programs. They are, sorry, not university programs. I don't think so much. More like in the private college sector.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're businesses. You know what I mean? They
Exactly. Yeah.
are businesses. And what are businesses trying to do? They're trying to sell you a service, and it's like a lot of these. I'm not gonna be, talking bad shit about
Mm-hmm.
these schools, but some of these literally just want to sell you a dream so that they can get young people to sign up to their diplomas, certificates, whatever, and they promise these things. So they spend thousands of dollars, but like the reality is that it's not really gonna make them guarantee a job, you know. But they have to say it so that people spend, 20,000, however many thousand it costs for the year, or even in some cases even less than a year, like 8 months or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, you gotta be careful out there. Like there are people who have their own interests. They're trying to defend their own. This goes for everything, not only for audio schools. Okay, you gotta be looking out because there are people out there looking out for their own interests, and you gotta protect your interests and like look out for your own interests as well, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and the other day, I these days I've been getting a lot of not these days, but I usually get a lot of younger people or like or even older people who have like a young kid, who have like a 20-year-old kid or like an 18-year-old that just finished high school and want to go into audio to like go for coffee and talk about the industry. And a lot of the time they're saying they're going to go to these schools that I'm not going to mention. And I'm like, man, like a lot of these is just like, I recommend a lot of the time, like if they're smart people, if they're people who do well in school, get good grades, like go to McGill and get an actual music major and then get a master's, because at least with that you can get their master's in recording, because at least with that you can teach, at least you can
Mm-hmm.
teach. Like nothing else works, you can literally go to Humber and be like a prof,
Mm-hmm.
with a master's in that. And that being said, with the bachelor's, I only have a bachelor's, and I have been offered teaching, not full time, but like a few courses. Just doesn't hasn't fit in my schedule because I work in a pretty. Usually my days are taking up, so I can't really teach during the day. It would have to be an evening thing anyway. Yeah, I don't want to get too long on this rant.
um
Yeah,
what's what's your opinion in regards to kind of people that are self-taught
yeah,
in the industry and stuff like that as well, being like not taken as seriously? Like, do you believe
no.
that certain like do you believe that there are certain schools that people need to kind of go to in order to kind of get into something like this, or do you believe that also there's other resources that they can learn audio engineering or music, all that?
Well, I think that the advantage of going to school is that it is the network, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not even the network of your own, of like your profs. Like it's not like your profs are gonna get you gigs or jobs most of the time. If you're an amazing student and you go to a school where your teachers are like they do outside work, that
Mm,
may give you a lot of opportunities. Like I know, my boyfriend and a lot of his friends and everything, they went to Humber, and these Humber profs, they all do stuff like outside of Humber. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So the chances of you landing your first gigs post graduation, even before graduation, through your profs is pretty high. So that's another tip that I give to people when they ask me, like, try to find schools that have the most. Try when it comes to audio, try to go audio or music. Try to go to schools where the staff is does work outside,
mm, mhm,
like where you've seen this profs play shows all the time, or like produce records all the time. You know what I mean? Because
mhm.
then if they're active in the community, active doing things, you're more likely to, like, if you excel at it, you're likely to have them be like, listen, I need help with this project. Can you come over? And from then on, it spreads. From then on, things get started. Um, but if you go to a school where most of the people who teach, they're literally just teachers. I mean, of course, you can learn amazing things. They can be amazing teachers, teach you very valuable things, but then the likelihood of you finding having a network that helps you post graduation is lower.
Mm,
And
mhm.
another aspect of another advantage of going to school is literally the people you go to school with, like the other students,
Yes, yes,
because
definitely.
I always give this tip to people who are in school, like, keep being friends with the kids, with the people you went to school with, like, keep in touch,
Mhm,
be like, how's it going? Go for beer sometimes. Where are you up to? There's been situations where, like, a friend of mine needed a gig, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually leaving this job, this studio. Uh, you take over for me. It's happened like relatively recently. Like, he was searching, he needed an extra income source, and I was like, you know what? Come and work for the place that I'm thinking about leaving soon. Should apply, blah blah. And there's been instances the other way around where, like, a friend of mine needed help with the project, and they reached out to me, like, a school colleague needed help, or even had a project that they didn't want to do and they offered it to me instead, or something.
mm, mhm.
So it's very important to keep, like, in touch with people you went to school with too. So that's the advantage, right? If you're self-taught, you can have the knowledge. There's a lot of valuable stuff online, but then you're gonna have a lot of, like, uh, you're going to be isolated. Yeah, of
Mhm.
course, you can go to, like, Facebook groups, but it's not the same, as like meeting, as like going to class and then grabbing coffee with, you know, your
Yeah.
classmates, or,
Mhm. Yeah, I
it's
get that.
it's not the same. And like, also, a lot of these YouTube channels actually give you wrong information. I've seen actual wrong things.
Mhm. Yep.
To what point does YouTube University actually, like, teach you the stuff that you need to do the job right? I'm not quite sure.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, so those are the advantages. But I'm a big believer in, like, valuing learning from several sources. Like, I don't think I'm not the kind of person that's like everybody needs to go to university. It's just like it just kind of like depends what you want to do.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And in regards to like women in the industry, because
yeah,
this is something that I find has it's slowly changing, but from when you began to now,
yeah.
how have you seen like even being treated in the music industry um with other men and also going to school? Like how was your experience with all of that stuff?
Well, I mean, it's like the 1%, right? I'm the 1%.
Yeah.
I wish I was the 1% in my bank account, but I'm the 1% in my industry, or like 2% or something. I think it's 2%. Anyway, like, it's like, um, when I went to school, my program had accepted very few people every year. It was like 30 people every year.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I think they raised it to 40 now, but the year that I got in, only 30 got in. And like, I was the only me as like an actual major in that in electroacoustics, I was the only one. As like a minor, there were other women, but like taking it as
Mm-hmm.
a minor. Like their major was in jazz or something, or composition, and they had electroacoustics as a minor. And then there were another two. Um, yeah, so very little. And out there in the professional world, like it's very common to be like, for me to be like the only woman. Like when I go to these audio events, it's
Mm-hmm.
very common that I'm the only woman.
Yep.
But I don't think I've encountered any like bad attitude or anything because I think I got to the industry when things like were already starting to change a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But also like we're in Toronto and people are pretty, woke here, are pretty like open compared to other places. Like, don't get me wrong, it's like I'm pretty sure there are things that I'm not aware of. I'm pretty sure there I may have missed out on some opportunities because I'm a woman, and I've never even been aware because it's been said behind my back or like there were
Mm-hmm.
decisions that were made without me knowing. But in terms of people saying something to me, like or me hearing or having a situation in which I don't want to have a session with her because she's a woman, no, it's never happened. Um, or in fact, quite the opposite. There's been situations where people actually feel like it's, oh, you're so accommodating, you're so like, it's been such a relaxing session, whatever. I was actually talking to my boyfriend about this, like literally this morning, like how that it's been happening on the CBC lately that like for instance when I've been doing a lot of work for like kids TV shows. So sometimes you get like kids to do VO and they come over and they're like, oh, that's like so cool, like such a young girl, like or like it's happened where I record also like very experienced female VO artists, voiceover artists, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is the first time it's been recorded by a woman. This is so cool!" And they're like so hyped. Like actually, it's happened a lot with like journalists and like voiceover artists for some TV shows that I've done, and like they're like, "That is so cool! It's the first time!" Like
It's so funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's like a it's like Uber drivers when you see a
yeah,
female Uber
yeah,
driver.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, my mom always like flips out when she sees a female Uber driver. She's
yeah,
always like making conversation like, "Oh my god, this is
yeah,
great."
yeah. But with Uber drive with female Uber drivers though, it's a bit different. I think it's even more of a thing because it can be dangerous, right? If
Oh
if
yeah.
you're driving strangers as a woman, right? You're putting yourself out there. It's risky. Me, I'm just like in the studio. Like I'm pretty safe. Like I can lock the person into the booth if I feel they're dangerous. So
Ah. um so in regards to your biggest struggles as an
yeah.
audio engineer, what do you think are your biggest personal struggles?
At the present time, so I can't say much about for my music work. The struggle right now, and that is has nothing to do with being a woman or anything. It's more like a holistic situation in which we're going through economically, uh, where some of my colleagues are going through the same thing, where it's like it's a bit slower now than it's been on previous years. So they're is navigating that. But in the audio world in general, I would say it's so misunderstood. Like I find that I mean I'm talking out of my experience, right? I'm pretty sure a doctor would probably say the same, or even like I don't know, a banker would probably say the same, where it's like, oh, people think they know these things, but they don't, and then they come with these assumptions. No, basically there's a lot. My perspective is that audio has a lot of misunderstanding, like people thinking that things are done a certain way and they're totally not done that way.
Mm-hmm.
I always get the impression that audio suffers a lot from that. Like it's almost like people understand visuals better because we're
Mm-hmm.
more visual creatures, but then audio they're like don't even understand at all. But it may be just my perspective, I think. But challenge, the challenge also like um I mean like any business, right? It's always like any service business, right? Dealing with clients and
Mm-hmm.
requests and at times trying to understand what they want. I think people now are have difficulty with like being yeah, with expressing themselves with like the right language. Like a lot of the time I get these emails and I'm like I literally don't understand what I'm trying to say. I need to
Mm.
like write an email for them to write me another email like explaining because yeah, sometimes it's hard for people to describe what they want, especially in audio. Like um yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine
Yeah.
how difficult that must be, and it is like your job to kind of create that vision.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's a struggle for sure. In regards to music, I kind of like ask this quite a bit to a lot of like musician artists and all of that stuff as well. So in regards to like mental health, do you
Yeah.
find that music is something that has helped with your mental health?
As a listener, yeah, but as somebody that works in the industry, sometimes damaging to the mental health. That's a tough question.
Yeah, 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 I
Yeah.
can imagine.
Yeah.
It's again, it's I find that yeah, dealing with people is the hard part. I
Yeah.
find the most about any kind of like job that is like service.
Yeah.
That's why I can't do it. I like me personally, that's one thing that I was just like, yeah, okay, I know I can't. I That's why I
Yeah.
have my own self business, self everything, but that also has its struggles to just like be your own boss, your own creator, your own like employee, your own
Yeah.
CEO,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And in regards to mental health, like
Yeah.
what do you find has been affecting mental health the most for you throughout these years, and what has been something that has helped you kind of deal with that?
Um. So, I mean, when of course COVID, right? It was stressful for
Mhm.
everybody. If we're talking about the last few years and the uncertainty around, you know, especially in Canada, like man, it's like I don't know if you have listeners in other countries, but like it's kind of like, and I was talking to my therapist about this recently, right? My therapist is in Brazil, actually. He's a Brazilian therapist, and I was telling her how the pandemic was dealt with here, and like how it got to a certain point that you were you almost believed that it was going to be that way forever, right?
Mhm.
You almost felt like okay, these politicians are going to have us locked up for eternity or like every single winter. There was a period of time when we had that lockdown in December 2021. I was like, oh my god, like this is gonna be like, is it gonna be like every winter that they're gonna like lock us down? You know? Anyway, so that caused a lot of anxiety, and I find that for me, what helps me with my mental health, like generally speaking, is of course talking to a therapist when I need to, but for the most part, exercise.
Mm. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that is a big one.
going to the gym, lifting some heavy weights. Like you have a heavy day, and then you go and lift some heavy things, and you're good. Like I'm serious. Like it just does
Yeah.
it. Maybe
Mhm.
it doesn't for a lot of people, but it really does it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was literally just thinking about that. Like even before this podcast, I'm like one, if I don't exercise, I get kind of, I don't know, frustrated, more angry, more impatient.
Yeah, yeah,
But when I'm angry, I love to exercise
yeah,
because I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I could get all of this out, and right after you just feel so good, like everything, like all the dopamine, all the serotonin, everything that you're feeling, you're like, okay, yes,
yeah,
okay, this is,
exactly. Like I think that a lot of the depression that we're seeing, so much depression in society right now, you know, is that people are just sitting down all the time. you know,
No,
like
but it's true, it's true.
of course there's depression as a chemical imbalance and all that stuff, but there's also like you know the condition that sort of puts you in that situation, like
Mm-hmm.
more likely to develop depression,
All
right?
of a sudden
So
the sun is like coming in, like oh, it's
yeah,
like shining on like as
I
like it's
actually need
getting
to turn on the
brighter
light
and
here. It's
brighter.
getting pretty dark. I'm gonna turn on the light here. Oh, I have so many things plugged. Sorry, one minute.
All good.
There you go. Way better. Way better. And
But yeah, it's the sedentary, and I think it's also
yeah,
all of these jobs too, like even with like social media work, with audio engineering, with all like so much requires your attention to be focused on the screen, on the laptop. And I do find that
yeah,
like it's great in a lot of ways, but it also can be for sure like overwhelming,
yeah,
like damaging to mental health, especially if you're just on it the whole time and you're not doing anything else, which a lot
yeah,
of people
exactly.
unfortunately are. They're
Yeah.
literally just sitting down in front of a screen and then wonder why they're feeling so bad or feeling depressed, or in their 20s or 30s feeling like they're fucking 60.
But also, the whole lying on social media thing, right? Which I can only speak from the perspective of my industry,
Mm,
but it's like, you know, things are not going economically well in society right now. Yet we have like, you look through social media and I see most of my colleagues just like, oh, amazing day, like so many great songs that I worked on. There a lot of the time you have like you go for beers with these folks and they're like, I'm fucking miserable, like I don't know how I'm even paying rent for my studio. And it's like, but if you're scrolling down, like it gives you the impression if you're not, if you're having like a bad week or a bad month in your business, you look at these posts and you're like, oh my god, maybe I suck, maybe I'm doing something wrong, right?
yeah, yep, yep.
Nobody's showing the vulnerability, you know what I mean? And it's like, I think there should be more support for like, showing when things are not going well, like just putting it out there. But everybody's just kind of pretending that everything's great in their lives and they're killing it and they're making a bunch of money, right? So being
Mm-hmm.
around seeing that all the time just puts you in a state of mind that is just like, like when I start getting that way, I just know that I have to like back myself out of social media for a few days and I instantly get better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I have definitely been there too. Like even watching
Yeah,
influencers on YouTube and stuff like that, and you can see
yeah,
like them having all this life and
yeah,
all of these like healthy foods and all of these
yeah,
beauty products and all of these things that
exactly.
you wish you
Yeah,
had, and then you start looking, you're like, my god, like my life, like what am I doing with my life, like if I'm
yeah,
not having these things. And
yeah,
yeah, and that's kind of like I've had a lot of backlash even with my own social media as well, with some people messaging me saying that I post too personal things,
yeah,
that they're like, "Oh, you're a little too honest. You're a little too real
yeah,
with certain posts because I post when I'm sad or when I'm mad or when I'm frustrated, and I kind of
yeah,
explain how I feel like more people should be doing that
yeah,
to show that this is the reality. Like it's not all the time that I'm like, today I'm sunshine and
yeah,
rainbows and I woke up today, I
yeah,
exercise and I'm on carnivore and
yeah,
I'm pain free. And it's just like, no, it's like not every single day is like that. Some days
yeah,
I feel like shit. Some days
yeah,
I'm overwhelmed. Some days I'm like, how the fuck am I doing my like self-sustaining my own business? Like maybe I should be working for somebody else. Maybe I should be doing something else because like
yeah,
everybody else seems to be doing better than me on
yeah,
social media. And
yeah.
yeah, that it's a
Like
big issue.
humans are geared to compare themselves to other people.
Mhm.
So when you add like social media into that, it's just like the worst thing for our brains, really. You know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And in regards to like self-love, because
Yeah.
on this like personal like topic and stuff like that, um do you find that you have had moments where you struggled with self-love more? And what are some things that has helped you with self-love?
Well, um, I mean, I've had like problems with self esteem and stuff throughout my life, so there's that in terms of self love. But like I said, like I needed to get to therapy to figure out the where that was stemming from to then
Mhm.
work on it, and sometimes um, sometimes you just need to have the right people around you,
Mhm.
throughout parts of my life, there's been eras of my life in which I wasn't surrounded by people that would put me in a state of self love. You
Mhm.
know, I've been in situations where like maybe I was going out with a guy that like didn't treat me very well or something, and then of course that affects your self love, right?
For sure.
Um, and but also like yeah, like I said, who you surround yourself with. Like now I'm surrounded by people that have a lot of love for themselves and for other people. So that
Mhm.
really helps with self love. Like I feel like I have self love now, when I hadn't for a while. So yeah.
Mhm. Well, that's great. Do you is there something in your life recently
Yeah.
that has changed or even changed your perspective on something?
Mm, yeah, actually. For the first time I'm in a relationship that is has gotten serious enough,
Mm,
and that is reciprocal. Um, and I'm starting to think about things related to family that I wasn't thinking before. You know what I mean?
mm,
About like ways that that I can maintain like what I love to do, but also delve into having a family. Whether it's biologically or adopting. Depends how things happen like chronologically, but um yeah, that wasn't something that was in my mind for a really long time. And that was partly because, like, like the hierarchy of needs, right? First,
for sure, for sure.
housing, food, whatever. So that part of my life started getting pretty solid and figured out in the last few years. My career got more established. And then once all of those things were figured out, my brain had space to, like, think about relationships and family and stuff,
Mhm.
when I was dealing with stuff, you know, I was dealing with like, how am I gonna pay rent with this? Like, how like, I oh, this client is late on paying and whatever. Like I
Mhm.
was dealing with that for a while, and like, how are you gonna think about family when you're when you're in that situation? You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's yeah, that's like a good segment into slowly going into now our sex segment, which we're literally
yeah,
diving into. It's like
yeah,
all a natural flow of things.
yeah,
But
yeah,
so in regards, like let's bring it back.
Yeah.
How was sex portrayed in your upbringing?
Um, I don't know. My parents were never like hiding stuff from me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I mean, I'm not saying that if there was a sex scene in a movie, it would be like, oh, let's watch this. And I was like 8 years old or whatever. Like, of course not. But oh, sorry, I just had the Google thing started talking to me. So yeah, like my parents were pretty were never like I didn't grow up with the idea that like sex is a sin or like a bad thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, like I mean, as I got older, right, once I was old enough to like understand things, like my parents had me pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
So I always grew up with this idea where once I was at an age in which, once I got my period and I became, capable of getting pregnant, that's when the conversations about sex what like started happening. Before then, it was like, you know, I don't remember about conversations about sex before that. Oh yeah, well, I remember seeing my mom like getting pads, and I asked what the pads were for, and my mom was like, well, like when you're when in a few years, like you're gonna, one day you're gonna also like have blood that comes out of you, and that means that you're a woman and that you'll be capable of having babies. Before that blood comes in, you won't be able to have babies, but after that, you will. And and then I asked like, why do you bleed? Like, is that okay? And she was like, yeah, it's totally okay. It's your body cleaning itself. It's a way of your body to clean yourself, like, you know. And then when I got my period at like 13, I saw my period. I'm like, I know exactly what it is. I know what's happening. I'm gonna go to the pharmacy, get some pads. Like, already knew everything. My mom already explained like you have the pads and you also have the you also have
Tampons.
tampons.
Yes.
And then but you know if I become a mom, I'm gonna talk about discs because
Oh yeah.
menstrual discs are the shit. Okay, more people need to talk about menstrual discs. They're awesome. But and green. They're also good for the environment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Much better for the environment. So
My mom's a little too hippie in that sense. She's just like, you got to take it out and like put it in your plants, put it on your skin. And I'm like, I think, like, as much as how hippie I am and how open I am, I was like,
yeah,
I don't know if I want to get that connected with myself.
yeah, yeah. Oh man, your mom is just.
It's
But yeah,
hilarious.
so I grew up in a pretty sex positive household, like. But mostly my mom, I didn't talk that much about sex with my dad. I think that's natural, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna talk about that with the parent of your own gender that you
Mm-hmm.
identify as, or even before you transition, you probably talk about that with the parent that you are more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable talking about that with. But like it was still like because they had me young, there was a lot of like you gotta be selective about who
Mm-hmm.
sex is like a baby can come out of sex, so you need to like be select the people you do this with. It's intimate. The consequences can be very serious, of sex. So you should be selective and do it at a time in which you feel you're mature enough. So that's how sex was talked about with me. It wasn't sinful, but also be selective. Do it at a time in which you feel you're ready and all that stuff. Yeah,
And with periods, let's talk a little bit about um
yeah,
like the discs and stuff. Like
yeah.
what makes you like that as an option?
I found out about discs through Mahmoud, right?
Yeah.
Guy Mahmoud, Mahmoud. And I was a pad person my entire life. I never liked tampons because I didn't like the feeling of putting something dry and like cloth like inside of me. It's just
Oh yeah, yeah.
I never even I was never even able to put the entire thing inside myself. Like
Same, same. Yeah.
not for me. But discs were like initially I was like, if I don't like tampons, I'm gonna put this inside me, right?
Mhm.
And so I bought like the disposable ones first to try them
Mhm.
out, and I was like, this is the best shit ever. Because in my mind I was like, how is it possible that you feel it when you feel it when you're putting it in, and as soon as it's stuck up behind your bone, it's gone. Your body doesn't feel it anymore,
That's kind of scary for me sometimes.
right?
But yeah.
It's kind of weird. It disappears. Like as soon as like it's in there, it's like your body is like, where is it? Like, and it's happened. Like I have to set reminders on my phone to take it out. Because sometimes
Oh
I'm
my
like,
god.
it's so comfortable that I forget. Right? I don't know if it happens to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, for me, I figured out about like
Yeah.
period panties when
Yeah.
when I was like 17 or so. Ever
Yeah.
since then, I love those. It never like bleeds out. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like a pad because it's not like wet. It doesn't stay
Yeah.
wet or anything.
Yeah.
So it literally just feels like underwear.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I love those. They even have like
That's
thong
awesome.
versions too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, this is
The
so
Knicks, right? The
perfect.
Knicks.
Like, yeah, yeah,
I'm
love
literally
it.
wearing a pair of Knicks right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, me too,
Them
actually. Yeah,
that birth
yeah.
control that I took that made me bleed for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I wear that all the time now because it's too much. Like it's not that good for your vagina if you're putting a disc every single day. And I've been bleeding for 3 months, so putting a disc every single day, like my vagina wasn't even holding the disc anymore after a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Like slipping out. Um, so I put a break on the disc and I'm just wearing the underwear now.
Yep.
It's awesome.
I like that now there's like so many options in regards to these things, but it's still so
Yeah,
weird that it's like in so many places, one, we need to pay for these things. I still
yeah,
think that it's like ridiculous that the amount of money we have to spend to pay for these things. But with things kind of like reusable, like like
yeah,
discs and all that stuff, or like period pants, I find that it's a little bit better.
yeah,
But still, like even when you're going out or something like that, or unexpected periods and stuff like that, like going into events or
yeah,
parties or wherever you are, and then suddenly you don't have that shit with you, and you're fucked.
yeah,
Unless you like go talk to another girl or something, I'd be like, do you have a pad? Like, do you have a
yeah,
tampon? Do you have this?
yeah.
It's just one of those things that yeah, I had some like some pretty scarring moments.
Yeah. I've never had an accident where like because the first few hours of my period is very little. It's just a few drops, so
Hmm.
it gives me time to like I can pretty much just be in my underwear for the first few hours.
Hmm.
You know. Um. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had moments where I've worn like white pants, and
Oh my god. No.
what's the funny thing is that I never like wearing white pants, but for some reason my body feels inclined to wear white pants when my period is coming. So I took that as a sign that I'm like my period's coming now. Because whenever I fucking want to wear white pants,
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that it's like like white
Yeah.
pants, white skirt. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
fuck that, fuck that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'll pass.
Yeah.
So what was one of your like first memories in your own like sex life, I guess, like even being, I guess, nervous
Yeah.
or feeling inexperienced. Like I remember personally, like when I was a teenager and stuff, and I told my mom, this is like such like like and I told my mom, I was just like I was like, how do you even know how to like suck dick? I was just like, how is that something people know how to do?
Yeah.
And then she's just like, I don't know. She's just like, it's pretty like, she's like, it's pretty natural. Like, she's like, it's just like she's like, it's like humans know how to do that. She's like, you just know not
Yeah.
to use teeth. And I'm like, but like, how? I was like, what do you mean? Like, how do you? And
Yeah.
that's I remember having these like thoughts and these kind of moments. I remember even
Yeah.
Laura and Sasha.
Yeah.
That's if you guys are wondering, that's Mariana's sister and my sister. They were once having a sleepover or something,
Yeah.
and they were both like virgins at the time. And Laura said at like I don't know, like 1 a.m. or something like that. And she's like, I wonder what sex feels like. And then Sasha was like, why don't you stick a finger in and find out?
That's such a Sasha thing to say.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh,
But in regards to like your experience, like what was like one of like the first things that you remember in regards to that?
um, well, I remember like honestly, I don't remember. Like I know that I talk, every preteen like talking about sex with friends and stuff, but I don't. I literally don't really remember what kinds of
Maybe you just like
conversations are had.
erased it from your memory.
Yeah, I mean, it was more like a celebrity or something, and you'd be like, "Oh, that person's hot. I wonder how it would be like to have sex with that person." Whatever. More to that extent, not. I don't think I. Uh, Maybe after when you have a friend, your first friend who lost her virginity, and you ask how it's like. Guess that where it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, how's that like?" Because that person done it. But I was. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really like super curious, like asking people things that much. I was just kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah,
I,
it's
wa- I
so
was more
wanna
like. I was more likely to go on the internet and like
and Google it.
post
Yeah.
something,
So yeah.
than ask
Mm-hmm.
people. Yeah.
In regards to you going from like girl to woman, like what has been the differences or your personal experience with it? Like what have you learned from it and all of that?
Sorry, can you repeat from what to what?
From being a girl to
Yeah.
going to woman.
Oh, okay. Uh, well, here's something interesting. It's more like how the change was from being a boyish girl to being a woman. That
Mm.
so because I was always like very like almost like tomboyish when I was growing up. So to me, a part of it was like learning how to learning about my femininity and becoming comfortable with femininity. I was always like into sports and playing instruments and stuff, which are fairly like masculine things. And as I become a woman, as I established myself as a woman, I became comfortable with my femininity. I realized that femininity doesn't need to be like opposing to any of those things. You can be feminine
Mhm.
and still be interested in those things. Femininity is about other things. It's not about your interests, right?
Mhm.
That's something that I learned. I also learned. I'm still learning too, like several aspects of femininity. Like I think that each year I become more comfortable being a
Mm.
woman each year that goes by. Um, while I was growing up, but that has also to do like culturally where I grew up. Like you know, I from the ages of 9 until 16, I lived in Argentina, and people there are very like genders are very defined things there. Like it's very like you need to dress this way, act that way. I don't know how things are now because the world is very progressive. Like the world,
Mhm.
like even Latin America now has very progressive ideas. So I don't know how things are going on now, but I'm just talking about my experience in like early 2000s in Argentina and going to school. Like what the experience was like, and it's like, oh, you're wearing these pants, these are not like girl pants, and and stuff like that. Oh, girls don't play soccer. Oh, girls don't do this. Girls do that. I think that if I grew up in Canada, I was 16 when I moved here, so I think that if I grew up here, I would have been way more like, you can be whatever you want, and it has nothing to do with with your identity, like with how you feel, like yeah, because back then it was like so much like even from family members, like more like extended family, not my parents, like like uncles and like aunts and whatever, where it would be like, why won't you wear this? Like they would be like come up with a dress and be like, why don't you wear this? It's a band. Almost like pressuring like what they expect of me as a
Mm,
girl,
mm-hmm.
like wanting me to act a certain way. And I was always like really uncomfortable about that. Well, at the same time, very sure that I'm a girl. Like I never had a moment where I thought I was trans or anything. Like always like, yeah, I'm a woman. I like having a vagina. Like I'm totally down with being a woman. I just like these pants better. I think they look cooler than those other pants.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
to me, it's
yeah,
simple as like
yeah. Just
go to a store and hey, I like that shirt. It's like, oh, it's a men's shirt. Whatever, I like that shirt.
yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like that. So yeah,
It's interesting too because I do find that I've been talking to lots of people with different cultural backgrounds and things, and it does have an effect. Like even being in like third world countries and things like that as well, and countries that are older have
yeah,
a different kind of like approach when it comes to style, what femininity is and what masculinity is, and how these clothes are for women and these clothes are for men and things like that. And yeah,
yeah,
as in Canada, I find that it is kind of different. Even like seeing a bunch of like TikToks
yeah,
from even just a couple years ago to now, there's so many people that are just like shopping in whatever section. It doesn't it is
yeah,
there's no such thing as kind of like, oh, like this is from the boys section, so I buy this for my son. Like that's it. Like it's
yeah,
like, oh, he likes this shirt, this pink dress, this My Little Pony shirt. You can get it
yeah,
kind of thing. And it
yeah,
is a very different like different mentality and stuff. And I do find that does kind of affect people in a sense with their identity of what is considered feminine or what is considered masculine.
yeah,
um and yeah, I don't know. For me it's interesting too because I find that even with me and my sister, at first, like when you're a kid, like you don't really have much of a say of like what you're gonna wear, because
mm-hmm.
you're not even like aware of like what dressing up, picking your own clothes and all that stuff. So there is like a point in your life where it's like your parents' decision of like what you're kind of gonna wear.
Mm-hmm.
Even with Halloween costumes, like my mom would always like pick our Halloween costumes. Like our first Halloween costumes were so like strange and weird, and I'm like, what the fuck was this?
yeah,
But yeah, my sister and I, like, we like I would always wear pink and she would always wear blue, and that's what like the parents picked for us kind of thing. And then slowly, like, my sister started to kind of get into more like sporty stuff, and I started to get into kind of more girly stuff. But as we got
yeah,
older, like that switched. Like now it's
yeah,
so funny because it's just like I
yeah,
remember my mom, she would like give me these like Adidas pants and these like joggers and all this stuff, and then she'd be like, you look at how nice these are, and I'd be like, ew, like I want to
yeah,
wear a skirt. And
yeah.
then like growing up, like now, like I am the one that always like kind of goes to like more of like
True.
the man section or like the loose and baggy section. And my
Yeah,
sister, it's the opposite. Like from her wearing those things, like now she likes to wear things that like show her cleavage and wear
yeah,
heels and all this
yeah,
stuff that, like, if I do want to wear like extra feminine clothes, I'll just go to my
yeah,
sister's closet,
yeah,
just like, can I borrow this,
yeah.
can I get that? Yeah. But
But I
it's
wonder if it has. Sorry to interrupt. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that was Sasha that way when she lived here in Canada?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
because I I think it's very hard to dress feminine in a country that's like fucking freezing 6 months a year. To
Ah,
be
oh
honest with
yeah, I
you,
think so
you
for
know?
sure. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, lately like now that she's back, she's just still rocking her, like her low cut
Yeah.
tops and things like that, like
Oh,
in
I
even
see.
in the
Okay.
winter. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just like something switched up. Like even like her group of
Yeah.
friends, I find that became more it was more women than men. And for me, it was always more like men than women. Even
Yeah.
with the whole like even going to like audio school and stuff like that, I was like
Yeah.
one of the only girls there too. There's only like two other. There's one that was like a lesbian, and this other girl
Yeah.
that wasn't even interested in it. And she literally left later on too. Like switched I guess like majors or
Dimension.
whatever. Um
But
but yeah.
did I guess
And
it right?
yeah, she did.
All this every time it's happened, like in other schools, I've seen it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun. She switched
Yeah.
to like yeah, like business and like it was like a I guess like event management or something like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Something yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny like to see. And it's funny because I called it out too to my
Yeah.
friend before I even started school. I was like, I think
Yeah.
I'm, gonna be like one of the only ones there. Like I was like, it's gonna be definitely majority male. And like yeah, even the school in general is majority male. Like there was like fucking four girls
Yeah.
in the school like
Yeah.
in that, but it was like a pretty private like small kind of thing. But yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, so it's like even me and my sister with in regards to that stuff, it's like yeah, we switched quite a bit, like
Yeah.
became kind of like the opposite of like what we we thought or whatever. Even in dating and stuff, like I remember hearing my family tell me that like they're like, oh, like like Lila's gonna be the ones to date the bad boys or the bodybuilders and these like
Yeah.
buff dudes. And like it was like complete opposite. It was like all these nerdy dudes for the
Yeah.
longest time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Even with types is interesting. Like I think even my type has
Yeah.
personally changed quite a bit. Do you find that like your type in men as well has changed or
I don't know if I ever had like types. Um, I would say there's things that I don't like and I avoid rather than type. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
there are very few things that I. To me, fitness is important. Like, yeah, fitness is very important because it's important to me. Taking care of my
Yeah,
body has always been important to me.
100%.
I've always, been a person that would eat a huge plate of broccoli with chicken breast and be totally okay with that and think that's
Yeah.
delicious and be tired and not be able to eat two hamburgers in a row in one day or in a week, you know. So that so there's that, but also like um I guess that I don't like the super macho type. I don't like the super
Mm-hmm.
um it's very rare that I would date a guy, the typical guy that has money, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because, I mean, I haven't met so far, maybe I haven't met a person like that so far, but all of the ones that I've met who are like well to do financially speaking guys, it came off to me as like wanting to control my life, wanting to tell me
Mm-hmm.
what I should be doing, or like got to a point in dating or not even dating or just going on dates without any physical contact, just like getting to know each other stuff. We started to get into the topic of like, do you want to have kids, and like giving this vibe of like, I'll just make the money and you clean the diapers, kind of vibe. And I'm like, yeah, not sure that's the vibe for me. So I kind of want a team player. I don't want a checking account. So like um So yeah, I would say that it's just I have not types instead of types. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that if you filter it out, you'll see that most of the guys I've dated are kind of like are creative people, uh, entrepreneurial people sometimes, um, and usually pretty fit, like you know.
Mm-hmm. And so with you, what is your, your dating life right now? Like, yeah, now you're in a relationship and it's getting pretty serious and
Yeah,
all of
it's
that.
pretty. It's not getting. It is pretty serious.
Oh, that's nice. That's great.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I've been with him for 7 months now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been it's been great. Like we've been learning a lot about each other. I've been learning so much about myself.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's something that definitely happens in relationships. It's like,
So many things that I'm learning I need to work on. Um, it's making me a better person. I'm getting so much personal discovery
mm-hmm.
on this, and but when it comes to like dating, I just had like some terrible years. Oh my god, I had like the worst luck for dating for the longest time. Like
Well,
in
you
a way,
broke out of the cycle.
I'm sorry, but I deserve the relationship I have right now. I suffered a
100%.
lot,
Yeah,
a
for
lot.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Mostly with men who like didn't like me to the same extent I like them, who kind of
Mm-hmm.
like use me and stuff. Like mostly in that sense, kind of have a history of that. Or dudes that were like too messed up, like you know, alcoholism or whatever like, happening, like didn't have their shit together essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, so this is the first time where like things fell right into place, where like all the boxes were checked.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. You broke out of a cycle and
Exactly.
you had
Oh,
to like learn
definitely.
from that, but also it's like it's interesting because it's like sometimes I even think about my past relationships and I think about that I might have not have been as ready if I didn't have like past experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind of it sucks and it's like a
Yeah.
horrible thing,
Yeah.
horrible things like happening and stuff like that. But then you might have not been as prepared to
Hmm.
give this much of yourself or to be this committed or all of that stuff. So it's like in divine timing.
Exactly. Exactly. In divine timing. I'm like, yeah, and remember I remember you made this post about manifesting. I mean, you made several posts about manifesting, I think. I remember one day I was like, I was for 3 years I was seeing this guy casually, and I was like in love with this guy, and for 3 years like just like a really shitty situation for me. Um, I don't think he was a bad person, by the way. It's just like um, it just wasn't, he just wasn't there, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just not getting it that he wasn't into it. He didn't want anything serious. So um, where was I? Anyway, like
Manifesting and
oh yeah, so manifesting. And I kind of wanted to end that, and I was like, I don't want to be seeing this person anymore. I want to have something serious. And then I literally jotted down a list of things that I was looking for. I was like, there's nothing else, there's nothing to lose, right? And just like, whatever, like, and I wrote down a list of all the things that I wanted. Very precise too, very precise in the description. And I folded that piece of paper, and I put it under my pillow.
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just thought like, when you grow up in Brazil, you're like, you like hear all these stories of macumba and like,
Yeah.
and these and simpatias, they call it simpatias,
Yep.
which is like where you do these things. It's not really voodoo. It's more like a manifestation, actually.
Yeah.
Really. Um, and I was like, doesn't hurt to try.
Yep.
So I did put the paper under my pillow, and then, swear to God, like 2 months later or so after that,
I'm
we go
telling
on our
you,
first
that
date.
shit works.
We go on our first date. It's crazy. And he's like exactly like the list. I wish
Yeah.
I still had that piece of paper so I'd show it to him.
Nah, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
I have made several of those lists, and the funny thing is that sometimes, like, yeah, like, if you're not like in part, like, really
Yeah.
detailed,
Yeah.
it'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, but you said this. It
Yeah.
was just you didn't mention this. So then, like, I would
Yeah.
go back to the list sometimes, and I would read, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
fuck, okay, I made the
Yeah.
mistake because
Yeah.
I asked for everything. So yeah, it works. It's
Yeah.
one of those things that I always tell people. I'm like, yo, if you're really into it, if you really want, it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've noticed that whatever this is, if it's like a manifestation,
Yeah.
superstitions,
Exactly.
some
Yeah.
sort of whatever energy that you're putting yourself into, kind of thing,
Yeah.
it works, and I've seen it happen for people 2 months, 5 months, like less than a year typically.
Yeah.
For yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know the science behind it, but maybe it's all
Like,
placebo. Maybe it's like just like, thinking about it so much and being in that energy that
yeah.
creates that. Who knows?
Exactly. I think it's like you open a pathway in your brain for that to be possible. It's like you put yourself in a mindset that make you open up your mind to that possibility, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like if you're close to that possibility, it can come up and you ignore it. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Because I'm thinking like if I didn't write that on paper, it means I wasn't open to the possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
right? And me being open about the possibilities meant that when we were having those conversations on Instagram, and we're like, oh, we should go get something to drink sometime, I wouldn't be open to like going for drinks with him sometime, right?
Yep.
So I think it kind of like relates to that, to like being open to things that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, that's great. Great information.
yeah,
Yeah, I should make a post about that, make a
yeah,
post about, like, like us, like, tips.
yeah, yeah,
So it's great. I love it. And in the kind of like the last few questions and stuff of like in regards to kind of relationships, you
yeah,
were talking a little bit about how your opinion on um like having a family has
yeah,
changed, and like how has that been like for you? Because even hearing like stories, like even growing up and stuff like that, and like, knowing you for so long, it's just been a thing that you're like, nope, no, I'm good.
yeah. I mean, it's because I came to understand, you know, how things started to change. Other than me being in a situation in my life that allowed me to even think about that, and being in a relationship in which I'm with a man that I can trust him on helping me out on raising family, right? Every other situation was like the guy was like emotionally absent or like didn't have their shit together, you know, um, which didn't give me the reassurance that that would be possible. When it came to family, it was never out of like a dream of mine for myself. Does that make any sense?
Mm,
I was never like, you know how there are girls that like play. Laura, actually, my sister's always been that way. It's like they grow up like playing with babies and like since they're kids, they just it's in themselves to like want to have their family for themselves. Like
mm-hmm.
I even have a friend um, from university who got a sperm donor. She got tired of waiting for a guy that wanted to start a family with her. She got a donor and she's raising a boy on her own, right?
Mm,
Um, so I've never been like that where it's like my dream is being a mom. To me, my dream has always been to like have a community and a family, but not necessarily have a kid of my own, if that makes any sense. I think
mm-hmm.
I always wanted a family. I was just not sure if I wanted to have a child of my own, if that makes any
Mm,
sense. like I never had like the maternal push, like the sort of like I need to be a mom. Like to me, I see it more as like, you know, yeah, like if it doesn't happen, suppose that like it doesn't turn out. I haven't tried to have kids yet, and I haven't had any accidental pregnancies or anything. So I don't know if I'm capable. Like I haven't tried yet.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I find out that I can't conceive? Like it wouldn't break my heart. Like it wouldn't be like it would be like I'm fine with adopting. I'm fine with not adopting. Like to me, it's more important to have like a good relationship with my boyfriend, whatever, my community, my family. That's more important. But getting back to the change of ideas, um, I also met a person that I remember like the first on our first date, I was like, man, like mixing me with him would be like a good combination. Like we were like super stoned. We're like smoking. We're like smoking a blunt in like the park. And I remember seeing him and like the sun like hitting his face and stuff, and I was like me mixed with him would be like a really cute kid. I remember thinking that. Um but yeah, but it's almost like I want to, but it's not an absolute like my life is not complete if it doesn't happen, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's more to that extent. When before I don't think it ever was an absolute never, 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 never.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more like, yeah, not my thing, don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
I'll pass kind of thing. Like, not really an absolute. There are people who are like, absolutely no, no, no. For me, it was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, not really. But at the same time, I was never, see, even when I would say that I didn't want a family, I was never like, if somebody offered me like a hysterectomy, I wouldn't get it, right? Because I always wanted to leave myself open to changing my mind in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was always that, you know, like maybe I'll meet someone that'll make me feel different, and then I'll appreciate having a uterus. I'm and another reason, and this one hasn't changed, is that I'm really scared of pregnancy. But
Mm.
as I became more aware of other possibilities of like having your own kid without
Again, though, they
going
say
through it,
they say
sorry,
it's like a manifestation thing too.
yeah,
Like the more you think about these like negative possibilities of the pregnancy, like the more you kind of like
yeah,
stress your body out in
yeah,
order to allow those things to happen. But if it's like,
yeah,
it's one of those things that's just like, that's like it could happen for sure, but it's
right,
like a percentage. That's like,
yeah,
if you're doing the right things and you have like so many resources around you too,
yeah,
your mom, my mom, all the
yeah,
stuff that have like so many, uh,
yeah,
witchy cures and
yeah.
uh different things to do to prevent and like
You know,
hippy dippy all the
yeah,
doulas and all of these things that is just like, I think that even generation wise has
yeah,
kind of like changed quite a bit. Like
yeah,
nowadays it's like it's so much safer, and people are even having children a lot later too. Like
yeah,
there's so many people in their 40s and 50s that are having kids that before it used to be like, if you're in your 40s or 50s, that you might have a kid that either has Down syndrome or a possibility of having miscarriages or stuff like that.
yeah.
So it's like it's
By the
changed
way,
quite a bit.
by the way, guys after 60 or 70, they also contribute to kids having Down syndrome and other
Yeah,
diseases.
yeah,
Just as much, actually. Just
yeah.
as much.
It's true.
So
It's true.
sometimes women are being blamed for that, but it's actually just bad sperm. Sorry
Ah,
to say bad sperm, like
that's
old sperm. Maybe the right term is old sperm.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you think about it, even more so for men because they create new sperm every day. Women, you're born with those eggs and you have them your entire life. Those eggs are new eggs are baby eggs that stay with you forever, whereas guys generate new sperm every day. So if their bodies are getting old, the quality of the sperm is also being affected. So I think a lot of things in science are like, there's a lot of biases, and
100%.
there's this incredible bias of like, guys can just have kids any age. Like, sure,
Yeah.
biologically you can. Is it a good idea to be having a kid at 80? No, I don't
That's
know.
true. That's true.
I know, Hugh
Yeah.
Hefner.
I mean, there's lots there's lots of research and stuff
Yeah,
like yeah, like for men and not
yeah,
many for women. And especially like even I've shared
yeah,
kind of a clip recently that even with like the clit, it's just like it was like known to have 8,000 nerve endings, and then they figured out recently that it's 10,000 nerve endings, and it's also
yeah,
because they were doing testing on like rats. Not even actual human beings, not even actual women. It was like
yeah,
rats, you know.
yeah,
But like with men, they know all these things.
yeah,
They have all these experiments, all that stuff, and it's just like it's still in this day and age. It's
yeah,
like it's sometimes it's mind blowing with certain things like that, and that's kind of where I see like in regards to even like some feminism stuff that's going on. It's like you can
yeah,
see why some women as well feel so strongly about certain things, because you're just like, come on, like it's
yeah,
we're no longer in the 1950s. We're in
yeah,
a day and age where there's so much information out there,
yeah,
and still
yeah,
still there's lack of research and
yeah.
lack of options and stuff for like even like what we were talking about, kind of like birth control and stuff for
Oh
men
yeah.
versus
Don't
women
get me
and
started on that one. It's
ah!
like that's like it's ridiculous that we still carry all the weight on that one. It's
Mm-hmm.
you know we put a man on the moon, and
Yeah,
we haven't
yeah.
been able to figure out how to get guys to like you know
Condoms
not
the only way. That's what they're
yeah, or a vasectomy, which is reversible, but then it costs like $10,000, $15,000 to reverse.
yeah, it might cause complications, I guess, too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a scary thoughts. Even as
yeah,
a scare, I think like it's
yeah,
even as a woman, like thinking
yeah,
about like getting tubes tied, like it's just a scary thought.
yeah. And like kind of not sidetracking, it's still related, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like the ex-president of Brazil, like Bolsonaro, the very hated president. You know that he had a vasectomy and he reversed it to have like his youngest kid,
Oh, did he?
like a little girl that
Mm.
he has, came out of post vasectomy.
Ah,
Like he got married for the third time with like this younger wife. She wanted kids, and he was like, okay, I'll reverse it, and we can have kids. And he reversed it, had a kid at like 70 and 60. Sorry, at like 60 or something, like
that's
58,
crazy.
like super old.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
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 I mean, it's never too late. But yeah, I've been with things being delayed. It's funny.
yeah,
I even think about things like the internet and stuff. I'm
yeah,
like, the fact that shitty internet still exists is
yeah,
mind-boggling to me.
yeah,
I'm like, how did we discover how to do all of these things, but the internet still could fail us? The internet could still fucking crash, Like we could still
yeah,
have poor quality on FaceTime or whatever. It's just like
yeah,
it's things like this that I'm like, what are we doing? But then figuring out like how to go to Mars.
yeah,
It's like there's so many things we haven't even fucking figured out on Earth.
yeah.
And we're like be
Well, a
trying to
lot of it has to do with investment, and I think that because women are like, yeah, whatever. I'll just put the IUD, even though it makes my period pain horrible. I'll just do it, whatever. So
mm-hmm.
many women are like, I'll just do it because that delays the process of investing in research to come up for something for men.
Yep.
And to
Yep.
be honest, I think it should also come from men. Like, like it should also come from men, like the pressure to, because it's beneficial for men too. There are cases of dudes who like got screwed by women who got pregnant for support, right? So it's convenient for men too to like have control over that for themselves, right? Especially when
Mm-hmm.
they're young and they're like, sleeping around, not wanting to have anything serious. Like that's perfect for them, right? I mean, of course, wear protection to avoid having STIs and all that stuff, but like it kind of saves you from potential accidents if you don't feel responsible enough to have a kid. Like imagine how many like single motherhoods that would avoid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like there's a point to invest in
You're gonna go perfect. You're like a perfect TED
yeah,
Talk candidate for this.
I know, right? Like yeah,
Make a whole TikTok, like literally just be like points of why I think reason one, reason two.
yeah, yeah. Like I mean, because clearly, like if a guy abandons a family, it's because they didn't want a kid to begin with, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
means they got a method of like stopping, not being able to get a woman pregnant. They can just avoid that from happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, interesting times.
yeah,
But hopefully things like that end up changing and stuff. And I
yeah,
think nowadays it's kind of weird too because it's not just delaying this from happening, but a lot of people
yeah,
don't want to have kids anymore either.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah,
I guess like they're not really putting in that much
yeah.
investment because of that as well. Like they're like seeing, yeah, I don't know. It's pretty strange. It's for like it's a thing that I think would kind of help in a lot of ways, but that with the way evolution is going, with the way that like social circles and economics and with society even like not having money and it being expensive to even afford food and all of that stuff that people are not even thinking about these things as a possibility anymore. Like nobody is thinking about
Yeah,
these things. Like so many of my friends too, they just don't want to have kids or
yeah,
uh so much of like the previous generations and stuff that are kind of like becoming 40 or becoming 30 something are literally just being in their single dumb child free life, and that's what they want.
yeah,
Which yeah, I wonder though, I do wonder because it's interesting. It's if they haven't found the right person. I do wonder if that's the case because I even think about that with like my sister and stuff. My sister is one of those people that just say like she doesn't want to have kids and all that stuff.
yeah,
But I think that maybe if she did find the right person, that she
yeah.
might change her mind about that. Not to say
Yeah, that
everybody does, right? Because like there's some people that just
definitely.
they don't want that or they don't want to be a mother in general. Like they
Yeah.
don't want to have that experience. Which is
Yeah, of
valid,
course.
is
There's
fair,
always been throughout history. There's always been. What we have to analyze here is why has this number gone up, right?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
different about society now in comparison to how we used to be? I mean,
Mhm.
of course, people had a lot more kids before because of religious reasons and because and because women were not as involved in the workforce and all that stuff. But also, I think that a lot of folks, I personally think that a lot of folks that don't say they don't want kids
Mhm.
comes from not being in the position in their lives which allows for that thought to even be a possibility, if that makes any sense. Like now we're in a society in which we have so many people in their 30s that are living with like a bunch of roommates. Like how are you even going to like think about family
Yeah.
when you're like with a bunch of roommates getting drunk and partying? Like, it's very hard to in that setting to even consider that possibility, if that makes any sense. Like, or if you're like do live on your own, but you're like super broke and you're like, you know, saving pennies, like you're not thinking about feeding another child, like a child other than yourself, you know. Like
Yeah.
I can speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why have I started considering family? It's not only because I found a guy that I would like to do it with. It's because I'm in a position in my life. Like I bought an apartment last year. Like I'm in a position in my life where like I have my place. So, I make, I have these moments where I make dinner for my boyfriend, and then I'm like, I can picture like the making one more plate for,
Yeah.
for a child. Like it's just like, oh, it's possible. Like one extra plate, like, you know, the three of us or
Yeah.
whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's it just ideas that pop into my mind. They're not like huge impulses. They're not like huge motivations. They're just possibilities. It's just like, this happened. Like I can do it. Basically, actually, you know what? The sentence is, I can do it, or I see myself doing it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which before
Definitely.
it wasn't, and now it is. Now I like, I have my own place. Like I don't have the pressure. Of, I and like a pretty stable job situation. So I can even, my brain even has the mind space. Like I come back from work or I come back from a session with my own artists or something, with my own clients, and my mind is like, that's it. I paid my bills. I I'm done my work. I'm gonna make a meal for myself and my boyfriend, and then my mind has the space to even imagine like one extra plate, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
like I swear to God, I was like literally like it's just a combination of little thoughts rather than actual plans. It's just like little ideas, like little images that I have of what's possible in
Mm-hmm.
my life. And then like the other day I made this meal for, and like my boyfriend is a musician and he had just played a show and he came back hungry and it was already pretty late, but I'm like, I don't know, I kind of feel like whipping out something good. So I made some like broccoli with like this spinach with cream sauce and cheese and chicken and like grilled chicken, and I mean it was pretty delicious, not too. But so I made that meal and I thought, and then from that meal I thought about like all the meals that I make and how they're like healthy and but also delicious, and I'm like, man, imagine like I'm gonna feed my kid like good food, like I'm gonna be like, I'm not gonna give my kid like a shitty McDonald's or like frozen food. Like imagine like I basically started having thoughts that like I would actually be good at this. When before I
Yeah.
actually never that never crossed my mind, right? I was like
Mm-hmm.
my life is a mess. Like my client owes me $2,000. I living at my parents' place. My job situation is a freaking mess. Like blah 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 blah. Like or when I was a bit younger, the part of my life that I was the most anti having kids is when I had roommates. If you, in my opinion, I have this theory. If you don't have a place of your own, it's very hard to think about kids.
100%. No, I
You
agree.
know what I mean?
I agree.
Or if you live with your family, say you come from a culture in which there's a lot of um, in intergenerational housing. So where like it's normal in your culture to have like your grandparents and your parents and you live in the same house, then those thoughts are natural. You're like, oh yeah, one day, I'm gonna have a kid and we're all gonna live together. Like, but in like North American culture where it's like by 18 you're out of the house and stuff, it's very hard to think about that possibility when you're in such an unstable environment or when you're in
Mm-hmm.
an environment that's like a bunch of young people like living, maybe responsibly is not the right word, but like sharing things and like you know dealing with problems about like, oh, I'm out of a job, can you cover rent for me and stuff. Like it's just like very tough to even imagine these things when you're in that scenario. So to summarize, I believe that the main reason why a lot of people in like the millennial and I think the Gen Z is going to be the same, are not into having kids is not really because of like global warming fears, or because like, or because of, oh, society now is like more sex positive and you can have sex without necessarily having a family or whatever.
Mhm.
Like 100% think it's like more like a hierarchy of needs situation where it's like people are struggling so much to cover the basics that it makes it hard for them to even like consider what comes later. And thank God we're in a society where there's conscience about having kids when you're ready to have kids. That's
Yeah.
something
Yep.
positive. So I'd rather have a society that like less people are having kids because they're having them if they really want to and if they're capable of
Yes.
raising them,
Yes.
than
Definitely.
have a society in which people are having kids because of social obligations, or because of like lack of contraception or
Mhm. Which
whatever, right?
unfortunately I still think is happening quite a bit, but
Yeah,
it's kind of becoming less and less now,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
great. Because yeah, I think that that's another thing like that kind of has
yeah,
always kind of annoyed me in a way.
yeah,
It's that for me, like I've always just had that maternal instinct. Like I've always wanted to be a mom, and it's kind of how what I've always kind of seen. But
yeah,
um I also had my own struggles with kind of like dealing with different roommates and all of these stuff,
yeah,
and think about like possibilities of the future, and also being stressed about that, being
yeah,
stressed about thinking about
yeah,
like I'm like, how the fuck am I going to be doing this shit, or like where am I going to be in like 1 or 2 years if I want to be doing
yeah,
this? How the fuck am I going to be doing that if
yeah,
I can't even do this, you know?
yeah,
Which now it's becoming more of a possibility for sure too.
yeah,
Like, I'm gonna get my own place with my boyfriend and stuff like that. We're gonna have like 3 bedrooms. We're like, okay,
yeah,
maybe the other bedroom
yeah,
could be a baby room, kind of
exactly.
stuff like
Mhm.
that. But yeah, like that one thing
Exactly.
that kind of bothered me for the longest time was people having kids just to have kids, or
Yeah,
having kids just because of like
yeah,
society says, or that you need
yeah,
to, go to college and then, meet a guy and date for this amount of time,
yeah,
fuck after this amount of time, marry
yeah,
after this amount of time, then
yeah,
have a kid after this. It's just
yeah,
like, and that's the day. Yeah, that's something I always kind of got heated and like kind of disagreed with a lot, and seeing with a lot of people kind of like being impatient with raising a kid too, because like it's
yeah,
unfair to the person that you're bringing into this world as well. Like if you
exactly.
if you chose to do that and then later
Yeah,
on are being, I don't know, like
yeah,
putting all of these stresses and traumas into your kid,
yeah,
especially the whole trauma, which it comes a lot in therapy sessions as well, and also different therapy like TikToks and stuff that I've watched, was the thing that's like, oh, like before you, like I did have fun, but now you're here and like I can't anymore. So that's just how, and it's just kind of like makes
yeah,
it the kid later on seem like, oh, it's my
yeah,
fault, I'm the
yeah,
burden here. It's like slowly as they kind
yeah,
of grow up, and it has that kind of like, well,
yeah,
you're so hard to take care of. I didn't want that, but
yeah,
it just it happened. So it's kind of
yeah,
stuff like that that's just like yeah, I don't know. It's luckily, yeah, with this generation, I find that that's becoming kind of less of a thing. And it's like I had a conversation yesterday as well
yeah,
with my cousin slash brother David.
yeah,
And we are talking a lot about like different things of like in societies and generations, and he was talking a lot of the negativity about them, and I was like, okay, I'm like, yeah, there's so many negatives and stuff. I'm like, but there's also so many positives. And he's like, oh yeah, like, oh, like of course, it's not like I'm not seeing the positives. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but the funny thing, I'm like, is this generation is not just being a little bit more conscious, I get, but
yeah,
also this generation is doing the work that many generations didn't in regards to trauma.
yeah,
Like so much of this generation is going to therapy,
yeah,
like going to therapy and
yeah,
talking about the problems and dealing with shit that
yeah,
their parents weren't, or their grandparents weren't. You really think like our parents before, like we're doing that. Like my mom never went to like therapy like that.
yeah,
And it's not like that she doesn't believe it, but for her to spend money to go to therapy is like, she's like, I have other places to spend money on. And
yeah,
it's not that she doesn't believe it. It's just kind of a thing that I also think that is also a generational thing personally.
yeah,
But with with our generation, it's like we could see this as kind of like money well spent going to therapy and dealing with our traumas and our ancestral traumas and stuff. So it's like
Well,
interesting.
and that goes into, the healthcare system and what the healthcare system considers health to be, which is absolute necessities. Are you gonna die if you don't operate this? Okay, we'll cover it and do it at a reasonable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of, and then everything else that isn't like, oh, your knee is like messed up and you need surgery, well, you'll have to wait 3 years or travel to another country to get that done.
Yeah.
And and mental health, oh man, I mean, it's like you're on a waiting list to get free counseling, right? Or like, so why aren't psychologists also part of OHIP, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know that the system is super broke and there's so much debt and it's barely standing up at right now, the healthcare system in Canada. But I wonder why. Since I mean, I know why. In when it was invented, when this whole system was invented, mental health was like this, whatever, like a separate thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, it's like it should be included into health, like same as dentistry, should be
Yeah,
included. But because it is health, like it affects your physical health, and your physical health
exactly.
also affects your mental health, or like work together, right? So yeah, that's something I always thought, and I'm really proud of this generation for doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to my boyfriend about this, and I wonder what you think about this. And I'm like, I think something that our generation needs to do different, that I hope Gen Z or Gen Alpha do differently. Hopefully I'm seeing Gen Z and Gen Alpha being able to do this. Our generation got um, the wave of feminism and how we deal with feminism. I don't think I think it's delaying other processes. Like basically, like the fact that so much of how we deal with feminism now is telling women that they can do all of these things in the way that the world currently functions. Basically, okay, let me be more specific. The world tells women that they can have a 9 to 5 with overtime job and go back home and still be okay with like, you know, putting the kids to bed, like watching something or reading a book or something after a very stressful day. Society says, go for it, be the CEO of a company and be a mom when you're going to be working like 60 to 80 hours a week. So how are you going to, take care of a family? Because society is kind of like ignoring that, whether you like it or not. Biologically speaking, the mom will always carry like a slightly heavier load of caring for children. Like there's like no way of denying. Of course, there are families that in which the dad is the one that's raising the family, but that's very like if you compare to the other way around, it's rare, right? So basically, my point is, I think our notion of feminism needs to be more like, let's be proud about the fact that we have these family responsibilities, and in doing so, we need to change the way uh, our our hours work, our schedules work, our structure of work works.
Mm-hmm.
So I envision myself, like being the kind of feminist that if I was like a CEO of a company, say a tech company or something, I would like set up a daycare in like beside the company,
Mm-hmm.
and like that daycare is like a benefit, like a job benefit, essentially, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like workers are authorized to go like during lunchtime to like check on their kids and stuff or pick up their kid. Flexible schedules where it's like, of course, there are times in which everybody needs to be there at the same time for meetings and stuff for convenience, right? You need people to be at work at the same time. Why does it need to be 8 hours? Why does it need to be 9 to 5 when people are working with Asia right now? I used
Mm-hmm.
to work at this gaming company, and my shift was 8 to 6, no, 9 to 6. I worked with Asia. I would report things. I was testing video games. I would report issues. People in South Korea. Today, I'll get the response the next day. And I was wondering, why don't I just work an evening shift? So I work at the same time as the people I talk to every day.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like denying that women, and not only women, but also men, because I think men also want to be more involved in like raising children. Like it's delaying this change that needs to happen in our labor structure.
I have so much opinions on this.
You know what
Yeah,
I
no,
mean?
I fully
Like,
agree, and definitely I do see Gen Z or like Gen Alpha fixing this. I feel like
we
I'm
don't
in
work in factories anymore. We don't work in freaking factories
that.
anymore.
Yes,
Why are we all
exactly.
like working at exactly the same time? Makes no sense.
Makes no sense. It definitely. The same thing. Like I find that right now, kind of like I'm what I've been struggling with too is kind of
Yeah,
like validating the fact that my job is a job.
yeah,
And it's like I'm a like full-time content creator and all of that stuff. It's not that I'm always getting the best income and all of that stuff, right?
yeah,
But my the reason why I'm working so hard on this is to be able to have flexible hours, and it is to be able to work whenever I
yeah,
want. It's to be able to do a night shift. It's to be able to do a morning shift. It's to be able to
yeah,
spend more time with my future children, to
yeah,
be a present mom, and then also be able to, like, I don't know, when they're napping or something or sleeping, I could do some work and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that's a thing that unfortunately it's still kind of seen as a problem. It's still kind of seen as like you're not working hard enough. You're it's like with with the previous generation and this generation, I still find that there's still some issues, like even with millennials, not all of them, but a lot of them too, still having that mentality that we need to have 9 to 5 jobs, and we need to it's like graduation is a must, all of these things are a must, and
yeah,
that's just how life has to be.
yeah,
But nowadays it's just like it's just not it anymore,
yeah,
and I think that's one thing that this generation is kind of starting to notice as well. Millennials are noticing it, but they're getting to a point where it's just like, where do they start in this
yeah,
as well, right? It's kind of like it's become it's this kind of like paradox in a way.
yeah,
And it's going to be, I feel like, yeah, eventually there will come a time where we will not no longer work 9 to 5s and stuff with the age of the internet, with the age of this stuff. I
yeah,
still think I don't think it's going to take that long. Yeah, I don't think it's going to take that long. I still think that there's a long way to go in this
yeah,
process,
yeah,
but and that's kind of what I wanted to be also, like an advocate for, in a sense as well,
yeah,
is to show people that, like, part of me also kind of wants to prove, which is why I work so hard in this too, is that part of me wants to prove that this is a possibility, that this
yeah,
is something that can happen, and
yeah,
that I can have my life be flexible in the way I want it to,
exactly.
but still be able to make income. Because nowadays
Yeah,
too, when you're working with companies and people overseas and all of this shit, it's just like it doesn't make sense
yeah.
that well, what are we doing?
Like if your
It's
main clients are working in a time zone that is 6 hours ahead, why are you working a 9 to 5?
exactly.
Like I understand if your shift needs to overlap with people, with local people who are dealing with people in the same time zones. Like that makes sense to me because then, of course, there has to be meetings between each other and all that stuff. Then make a shift that overlaps this time zone with the other
Mm-hmm.
time zone or something. Like it's just there's so much status quo keeping. And what's really funny to me is that you know I've been thinking. I always thought that the 9 to 5 shit didn't make sense anymore. even before COVID. And I thought the change, the flexibility of schedule thing was going to happen before the work from home thing. I was
Mm,
actually
mm-hmm.
actually thought it was really weird how the work from home transition happened before the flexibility of schedule transition.
Yeah.
It's kind of backwards to me that you're like, yeah, you can work from home now, but yeah, still nine to five. Like,
Still not. Yeah,
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 half our accounts are in Singapore, Japan, and like 12 hours ahead. Still 9 to 5
yeah.
p.m. p.m. to p.m.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's just like that
Well, I
annoys me
think
so much.
I do think though, again, it's like with this with the feminism thing, which is kind of like it's a touchy subject in a lot of ways because like I'm even this is
Yeah,
why I made this podcast is in order to speak about all these subjects, in order to speak about all this stuff, but like freely without judgment. Like I get like any people to say whatever the fuck they want to say, and that's gonna be their opinion
yeah,
and their thoughts and stuff like that. And with cancel culture, all of this shit.
yeah,
That's another huge problem that I'm not even gonna get into because like that's like,
yeah,
but when it comes to kind of like where we went, I think we kind of went a little far in certain aspects of feminism, where I
yeah,
kind of disagree. Where even having like I think that it's great that women can work and women want to work. That's great that they can. It's some like some people are not made to just be the nurturers, the mothers, and all of that stuff. And or some people like want both, and that's amazing. It's good to have that option, but I also think in regards to kind of like having our um and this has nothing to do with femininity or masculinity. I just think roles as men and women,
yeah,
of like men being providers in certain senses. And this doesn't mean only financially. This can also mean emotionally. This could mean so many
yeah,
things. Like I think that nowadays the new age feminism has taken all of this away from man too. To take
yeah,
every single role that they have away, and
yeah,
then men don't know how to become men anymore, and there's no longer also the initiation of becoming a man. there's
yeah,
no there's no the father that teaches the son or the elder, whatever, because everybody's too busy fucking working.
yeah,
Everybody's too busy in this day and age, both men and the woman working. So,
yeah,
and again, it's like it comes back to that thing about like how are you even going to think about having kids if you're fucking working all the time too,
yeah,
trying to support yourself and trying to get income to eat, to
yeah,
to stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, I think that that's where it became like too far in when I think about kind of like the roles of what a man is and what a woman is, kind of thing.
yeah,
And it doesn't even have to do anything with like the way they present their femininity or the way they present the masculinity, like when it comes to style or whatever. Like people can wear whatever they want, people can be whoever they want and all that stuff. I just think that there are certain things that, even for
yeah,
example, women are capable of doing that men cannot do, just biologically speaking. And the same thing that men, like men are always going to be physically stronger than us. Doesn't matter
yeah,
if we train heavily, we could train, there's just how it's going to be. But they're not able to carry children, and we are. Like that's
yeah,
just what our bodies are capable of doing. Our bodies are capable of doing other things that they're not able to. Why compete that? Why try to make it
yeah,
seem like, like it's like we can do just as much or
yeah,
stuff like that. I think that men and women both have their own strengths and their own weaknesses and stuff like that. I do not think that they are equals. And that's
yeah,
my personal opinion. It's just like a lot of people have this thing about like equality. I'm like, we're not equal. We're
yeah.
not, because there's just so many different things. And
We
I'm
both
not to
matter
say,
the same, but we're
yeah,
not the same.
because
That makes
yeah, yeah. And it's just like I'm not saying that like one is like like men are better or women are better. There's no better or worse. There's no the same.
sense.
When it like it's just different. It's
Yeah,
different, and people need to realize this too. And that's a thing that I find is it has taken a step back from what we were able to be doing as well, because I think that even like for example, even with in regards to relationships, like even your
yeah,
past relationships, my past relationships, the experiences that we had, the negative experiences,
yeah,
oftentimes led to us being in our masculine. We're no longer able to be in our feminine and be in love and
yeah,
feel nurture and feel to be sexy and to be a woman. We're no
yeah,
longer being able to be in our feminine because we have to take control of being in the masculine seat, taking control of a man that doesn't want to listen, or a man that isn't being respectful or stuff like that. Suddenly you're the man of the relationship, and it's just like you start to realize it's just like, oh, I have to do all of this shit. But then when you're in a healthy relationship, suddenly you're able to sit back and relax a little bit, and you can allow them to be a man, they're being their masculine and you being your feminine, without it clouding
yeah,
your feminine, without it making it seem like, like you're less than.
yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and that's the thing
Exactly.
that I find that is also affecting that. It's affecting that movement of
Yeah,
even work, because nowadays it's just like it is whole, like, even like the dumb shit, which is like really stupid, of like having like double
yeah,
income in household and stuff like that.
yeah,
Like, in order to make investments, in order to buy a house, in order to just to have like this, so many places are just like double income. If you're not both making income or stuff like that, it's like it's out the door kind of thing. And it just like has to be like this, like we help each other, we're a team, we have both of our own strengths and weaknesses. And
yeah. Well,
but
the
this,
double
yeah,
income thing is because in case one loses the job, there's the other one to
yeah,
make
100%.
keep the bills getting
Yeah,
paid.
yeah, it is for sure. But I
Yeah,
also think like I mean, in the sense like yeah, for sure, in regards to like payment rents or whatever, like they always want to make sure that's the case
yeah,
in certain ways. But I also think that nowadays people like society is just making it harder as a whole, in order for like couples or people to even also again start families, or start thinking about anything other than themselves,
yeah,
because it's just making it harder. It's just everything is becoming harder. Everything is becoming more expensive and all that stuff. But yeah, I do think that uh like even having like you having a job, for example, that you like to be doing is
yeah,
also very important. It's very important for your mental health, very important for the
yeah,
stuff that, like for you to even be
yeah,
thinking about a future too. It's also very important
yeah,
to be able to be doing something that you like.
yeah,
Because how are you going to be, like even if you have money and all that stuff or whatever, it's just like if you're not happy with what you have with your life and all that stuff, it makes it so much more difficult. And I think that nowadays this generation is starting to realize that too, and that's what's kind of switching. It's just like not only do we want to have flexibility, but we also want to have a job and career that we want to be doing. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. There's so many like opinions and things about these stuff, but yeah, I find so much has affected it, and uh there's all pros and cons about these things, but it's just like whatever we do, even if it comes to be a positive effect, there's always going to be some sort of downside kind of to it.
yeah.
So I kind of wonder how it's going to be like in the future, um if even people are going to have a little bit more of a laid back attitude
Mm,
in regards to work.
well, it's all about generations. Like, I'm really interested. Like, I love um, demographic stuff. I follow people who analyze demographics and politics and how they're correlated and stuff. Like, I love this thing about how each generation has a different identity and all that stuff. And my conclusion is the young people of today are the bosses of tomorrow, right?
Mm,
So it's like whatever the current generation thinks is all right and should be that way, once they're at the age and level of experience in which they're the bosses and they're the ones that own the businesses, then they're the ones that are going to make that change, right? And we already
mm-hmm.
kind of started seeing some, I mean, the labor laws that allow like paternity leave and all that stuff, those are made by the Xers, that like once they started getting into like management positions, right? And by and the well, like the boomers and the people who came before them had this idea of like, no, you need to work yourself to death to be someone. Like your like work needs to be your life, and you need to work 80 hours a week or you're nobody. Like that kind of culture of like that boomers kind of had, which generated a lot of divorces.
Mhm.
And then the Xers came from that, and they're like, well, fuck that, we're not doing that way.
Yep.
And then the millennials came up, and they were like, and they saw how like the Xers were still kind of like obsessed about working themselves to death. They're like, let's start changing things up. And now that uh, that millennials are becoming bosses and managers of things, things are going to start changing, I think. But I'm excited to see what future generations are going to be coming up with to make things better. But it all goes back to my point. Like, we need to stop with this idea that we're the same, that women and men are the same,
Yeah.
and that everything's possible. As a woman, you can have everything. We need to stop with this, you can have everything, because it's actually delaying things changing for the better.
Yes. That's the
This
thing. Yeah.
this idea of like, no, you can totally like freeze your eggs and have a kid at 50. Like that's totally fine. And these companies that freeze your eggs, it's their interest to sell you that idea,
Exactly.
right? But then these poor women don't know when they get to like 47 and want to have a kid, and like all their eggs, none of their eggs worked, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, because the failure rate of freezing eggs is fairly high still.
Mhm.
The technology keeps on getting better, but it's still not that good. There's still a pretty large risk that your eggs are just not going to work out. So people, women are delaying um, motherhood to have kids, and so have I. Like I'm 33 and almost 33, and but and I love what I do, and I wouldn't stop doing what I do just to be only to be a homemaker.
Yeah.
But um, but like the reason why is because we're obsessed by this idea that women can do everything, and that there's no limits. You can be a boss bitch that works 100 hours a week and still raise a kid while being sane, and have the kid feel loved and not abandoned by their mother. Like it's just not, you know, we're just delaying the process of like changing labor laws. We're just delaying the process of like making work environments more flexible for everyone, because this isn't only beneficial for women, right? It's also for men. Like, you
Mhm.
know, like I see my dad. Like my dad missed all of mine and my sister's childhood. Like, and I bet that he would have loved to have like a labor situation where it was more flexible and allowed him to participate in our upbringing a bit more. Like,
Mhm.
options to like take longer leaves, longer vacations to spend with the family, whatever, like um I know that in terms of, when you own a business, it's hard to provide that for your workers,
Mhm.
but I believe that you can't only think about the profit all the time. Like, of course, you got to think about the profit if you own a business, but gotta have to think about a bit about the society as a whole too. You know,
Mhm.
and all the best entrepreneurs I know, they were all thinking a bit about the world as well as like their business being profitable. So, like, I don't know. I see Gen Alpha doing that one. It's not
Yep.
gonna be it's not gonna be millennials, because millennials are stuck in the idea. Millennials were raised and are stuck in the idea that women can do everything,
Mhm.
and then they realize, oh shit, no, we can't do anything. We can't do everything, and then it became this. Oh, then I'm not gonna have a kid, because if I you know if I can't do both perfectly, I'm just not doing it. Uh, Maybe, I don't know. Gen Z is more conservative, so we may have a bit of like a you know some women not being so obsessed about having a career in that generation. So I think it may be an alpha generation thing where,
Mm-hmm.
and plus I think they're going to be, because of AI is going to be way more advanced by the time it gets to them, to that generation. By the time that generation comes of age and becomes bosses and owners of businesses and owners of corporations and stuff, then it's going to be like, I think they're the ones that are going to make that change because AI is going to allow for a lot of free time for people. A lot of like, oh, I'll just leave this running while I go and do this other thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to allow for a lot of flexibility in our work lives that didn't exist before, you know?
Chat GPT.
Exactly. Like,
It's literally cut down on work like so much, even for
yeah,
me with my content and stuff like that.
yeah,
I'm like, oh my god, okay, what am I thinking of? What am I okay?
yeah,
Right? I don't know. A to B.
yeah,
Okay, look at it. Okay, let me just switch this. Done. Made my it's like it's interesting now. To kind of see that. And yeah, I think that for sure so many things are going to be changing in regards to work and um I oftentimes talk about kind of like how like our parents I guess our parents are like the last generation to have this type of mentality, to have these type of 9 to 5 mentalities, to type like a kind of, I
yeah,
think that, millennials again, yeah, they're, they did their work and they paved the room for Gen Z to do their work
yeah,
to start it, and then Alpha to kind of, I guess, finish it, to kind of go into a new type
yeah,
of generation. So hopefully that happens because yeah, I mean, even myself, like I find myself struggling with that. And definitely still it's still not fully taken seriously. That's the thing.
yeah,
Uh and it's not just about kind of like money and things like that. I think it's also just the mentality, the mentality of like hustle, hustle, hustle,
yeah.
work, grind, grind, grind. I actually saw this
Well,
TikTok.
our generation grinds out of survival, you know, with
Yeah,
like kind of
exactly.
previous generations. I'm not gonna say all previous generations because before the boomers, silent generation kind of GI
Mm-hmm.
generation, they did not have a good time either. But like previous generations worked hard to for status, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
The I still see it. I still see many things, and I still it's one thing that I find that the like a kind of that generation um is still having a hard time understanding. Like even if I'm speaking about these types of stuff, I still find that I'm like, okay,
yeah,
I need to work hard in order to kind of prove them wrong
yeah,
in a sense. But I think that we're just the right amount of driven to do so.
yeah,
So I think that it will be it will work. I saw this funny TikTok about this girl like and she was saying how she like doesn't want to hustle. She was like, your 20s, your 20s are for hustling, your 20s are for working, your 20s are for grinding. And she's like, no. She's like, your 20s are for grinding, my 20s are for having fun. And then she's
yeah.
just like, grind, grind, grind. She's just like, my dentist told me not to grind. She's like, do I look like a blender to you? I was like, yeah, this is only this generation making these jokes and stuff. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a bright future. It's
Yeah,
great. Before we finish up, I wanted to ask um a question, and that is, what is overrated in sex?
Oh, good. Funny question. Um, what is overrated? And I would say the search or the necessity of getting an orgasm.
Ah, yeah, definitely.
Like the whole pressure that men have of generating an orgasm on a woman is overrated.
Mm, yeah.
Because I've had great sex, and for whatever reason, my body at the time wasn't able to produce an orgasm, but that was still
Mm-hmm.
amazing sex. And for guys, it's like really hard to understand.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
good one, actually. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
And for the last question is more, I guess it's more kind of like, I kind of want to switch the wording to this because I find that
yeah.
some people kind of like misinterpret. They're like, what? But it's more, I guess, like, do you have anything that you want to share with listeners, like whether it's advice or something that you've learned, or kind words, whatever it is.
Yeah. Um, buy gold.
Michael.
Advice.
Great advice. That's hilarious.
It just went up $2,000 today.
Amazing. That's good to
Right.
know. Yeah, I should definitely buy some gold.
So yeah, that's that's my advice. Or silver.
Oh, that. And for if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram. That that's probably the one that I post the most interesting stuff. And that's Mary, like Mari underscore Hutten. So underscore Hutten. And I have Facebook too, but I post like more like personal stuff on Facebook, I think. And I also have a website that I need to do some updates on, to be fair. Um, www.mchcmusic.com. Um, yeah, so you can find me there. I don't do Twitter. It's not because of Elon Musk or anything. Like I never got into Twitter for some reason.
Yeah, I have a Twitter. I hardly use it too. It's one of those things.
Yeah,
But yes. Thank you so much for the lovely conversations and
no problem.
sharing your opinions about things and diving deeper into, the conversations that may be harder to talk about.
Yeah, no,
So yeah.
it was pretty good. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was my pleasure. It was a great chat, but we usually have great chats
Yeah,
normally anyway. So,
exactly. No, it's good that it's now recorded is what it
yeah,
is, like now you can
exactly.
people can see that. They're like, "Oh, okay. I see it."
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode, that podcast. And
yeah,
yes, I actually, if you guys are unaware, as of now, there's going to be weekly episodes instead of bi-weekly episodes because you guys have been bugging so much, just not having enough.
yeah,
And so, because of that,
yeah,
I am doing weekly, which is a lot more harder. But I love interviewing people and I love doing this podcast and having, you
yeah.
know, conversations with different people. So I hope that you guys enjoy, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.